Well, hello and welcome to a special edition here of comments by John Lindsay, that's myself of CARP, and Tom Price from our City Institute. We've been with you before, but now with the election only days away, it's time for us to be with you for, I guess, really a look at really what is an election, really, because it seems to be, I know, Tom, we're going to be covering a number of topics here. We have a list of some of the candidates. We have a list of some of the, I guess, main issues. But really, it almost seems like anybody can run for election. You go out, you knock on doors, you put up a lot of signs, and maybe you get elected. Is that really the way we should be choosing our people?
Apparently, we've been doing it for centuries.
And I know that I think it was Winston Churchill said that democracy is not perfect, but considering all the other alternatives, it really is the best that we have. But does it really give the people who are voting a real understanding of the candidates, of what they stand for or what they purport to stand for?
Well, I think first of all, we have to examine, you used the word democracy, and Canada does not have a democracy. We have what is called a legislative democracy. So we don't really have a democracy as such. So the method of selection and that is distorted by the fact that we don't have a true democracy.
So what you're saying is once you elect them, we really have, well, not a dictatorship, but the average citizen doesn't have much of a chance to change things.
Well, no, it is a dictatorship. If you take a look at what happened recently between the federal and the NDP party, the NDP party committed all of their members to backing the Liberal Party in federal parliament.
Right.
Well, that's not democracy. If you've committed your entire party to supporting a bad idea, what say does those party members have to represent the people they supposed to represent? So
well, that's on the federal level. Of course, the provincial level is somewhat the same way at times, but here at the local level, we have, of course, an election that's taking place, and we have a number of people running for mayor, a number of, I think 50 candidates altogether for both the mayor's position and for various councillor slots. Now, if you take a look at some of the slogans, I just had, two slogans that I picked up. And one was from Bob Johnson, and the other was from Paul Lefebvre. Now, Paul said his slogan was making good things happen. And Bob's was not bigger, but better. Well, we don't have to worry about the bigger part of that slogan because our former mayor is not running. I understand he's a bit bitter about this, but nevertheless, when you go back to what Bob said, okay, better. So we have Paul saying making things happen, and we have Bob saying better. Now, if you just go on those, what does that really mean?
Doesn't mean anything. Literally. What are good things? Well, good things to you may not be the same as good things to me. So if he's talking about good things by the majority, that the majority think are good things, then that would require a collective of representatives actually representing their people. And as we found out in the last council, the last two councils, in fact, a total of 7 people were the majority. So, and with only, I think, about 28% of the vote. So how does that get to be a majority? So again, that's not democracy. Democracy would be a system whereby we get representatives that do represent more than 50% of the vote. And we're nowhere close to that.
One of the things that was brought up by a lot of the candidates was more opportunity to have access to your councillor or your mayor through meetings, perhaps one every quarter, at least a couple per year. An opportunity to get out and actually have sort of town hall type of situations. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a good idea, but I think it's more important that the individual counselors talk to their constituents, find out what the constituents want, and they can have a town hall meeting every second week and be more in touch with those who want to come out. But again, a town hall meeting and polls and all these things are no representation of the major population or the majority population. So we have to reconcile ourselves to the fact that we are not, by any stretch of the imagination, a democracy. So then we have to conduct ourselves in a manner that will allow us to get good representation at making these major decisions. And that has never been done.
But you talk about, or some people talk about referendums, but then again, sometimes referendums, like I think we saw with Brexit in the United Kingdom, you have a lot of opinions, politicking going on. And I always felt that unless people are fully informed, it's really difficult to justify referendums. Is that your feeling as well?
Well, yes, and on top of that, the referendum is swayed by the questions that are asked.
Mm-hmm.
So the smart politician, if he's drafting up the referendum, can draft it in a manner that gets the answer he wants or she wants.
Right.
Okay, so
yeah, so it's sort of the devil is in the details.
that's right.
Now, I represent CARP. We have about 300,000 members across the country, and we don't represent all older people, of course, but nevertheless, we've done a couple of surveys, and we're going to be talking about this in just a few moments' time, the so-called big projects, the legacy projects that have been so contentious over the past couple of terms. But all the candidates basically talked about it's time to have an audit to look at the financial situation, and we noticed that the city came out with, you see this. A report from a credit rating agency, so-called credit rating agency, which was paid for by the city, by the way, that said, hey, we're in good shape. And when councillors asked for, maybe zero-based budgeting or some looking at the financial situation, staff would say, no, that's too much cost. We're okay the way we are. Now, what is the answer to that, in your opinion?
The answer to that is to perform, instead of performing a percentage increase budget, to perform a zero-based budget, a minimum of every third or fourth year. And on top of that, have a council that is very, very demanding of staff. Instead of having a council that spends half of their time saying, thank you very much for staff for the wonderful job you've done, start questioning what they're doing. And most of our recent councils have spent more time saying thank you for bad work. Well, that's terrible. Like, if you're demanding good work and getting good work, you don't need to worry about a referendum. You don't need to worry about these things because you're demanding the work that you're paying for. And if you're getting that work, that cancels a whole lot of problems.
I seem to hear what you're saying is perhaps we should have an election for staff rather than, or besides having an election for councillors.
Well, no, like a private industry, you simply need a council that acts like a board of directors, and they demand performance from their employees. I take strong exception when I hear councillors saying, well, we work for the city. Excuse me, we elected you so that the city worked for you as our representative. And when they say they work for the city, no, we're paying them to work for us as constituents. They are our representative. And if they're not representing us, then they're not doing their job.
Along those same lines, we often hear that, well, you elect a mayor and he or she only has one vote. And, it really doesn't make that much difference. What's your opinion about that?
Well, the mayor should not have any vote except in a tie situation. And there should be no ties because every major decision should require a 2/3 majority. If there's no 2/3 majority, then they go back and do the homework until 2/3 are convinced it's either the right or the wrong thing. But if there's no such thing as a tie vote, then the mayor never gets a vote.
Now, one other, just on that same topic, where we have a chance here, we had, of course, a lot of contention and divisiveness and, well, a lot of other unpleasantness over the big project, the KED project. And it really boiled down to 7 in favor and 6 against, and the mayor was in favor. Now, did you feel that, big expenditures like that should require more than just a simple majority, but is it still possible to have the majority still do something wrong or questionable?
Always, the majority can always do something wrong, but to answer your question, doesn't it seem odd to people that it requires a 2/3 majority to extend the council meeting by 20 minutes, but a simple majority can approve a $100 million project? There's something wrong there.
Very good question. Well, you've done a lot of in-depth research and study over the past couple of terms, our Towns, Our City Institute, and come up with a lot of very, very interesting and valuable information and insight. However, a lot seems to be ignored. Has this discouraged you?
No, I don't discourage easily. It's the old story. If you're doing the right thing, good things will eventually happen. So just keep doing the right thing and good things will happen. And we've just seen that recently, where 2 members of that 6 plus 1 of the mayor, 2 of those members have dropped out of the council race. Okay, so the good things are happening. If we get a few more good councillors in there, more good things will happen, but it's a matter of patience. We only get a chance at this every 4 years. If we don't make the most of it at election time, then we live with the consequences for 4 more years. And that can extend due to whatever commitments they make in those 4 years.
Sure. Well, I always felt personally there should be 3-year terms and a maximum of 3 times around and then out. But that's my own personal opinion. But let's look at the mayor's contest here. We now have fewer in the race now because we had the mayor drop out and we had another candidate also decide not to run. We have 3 women, 1 new, 2 you might call, I don't know if I should use the term old timers, but and Mila and Evelyn, 2 new fellows that came in, Don Gravel and Devin LaBranche, who both had some interesting ideas as well too. And of course we have Paul Lefebvre, who seems to have, of course, name recognition and some experience at the federal level. Bob Johnson has been very vocal, and he's got a lot of interesting response because he seems to be, I guess, forthright and to I think the expression is call out when the emperor has no clothes. Is this good for the process?
Well, the whole process is so distorted that it's hard to say whether it's good or bad. One thing going into an election, there should be an agreed set of critical issues that people campaign on. And we don't do that. People go out and they make promises, they state platitudes that really mean nothing as soon as the election is over. But for example, how many people have you heard talking about the major demographic or age distribution problem that we're already facing and is going to become much more severe? Like, we're not going to have the population to support the costs that we're being committed to. But none of them, well, I'm sorry, 2 of them did try to mention it, but it never got any debate. Well, that's a pretty critical issue. How many of them talked about the city budget process, where we simply add a percentage every year? Well, who's looking for the efficiencies? Who's looking for the savings? If you're simply going to say, well, here's 3% more, fix your budget to use it. That's not budgeting. That's just a gift to the people who can build empires out of it. And
These are issues that I think one candidate in past federal elections said that important issues are too complicated for the average individual to look at. And this demographic situation seems to be something that seems to be ignored too, although it's real and it's there and it's coming.
well, I would ask that individual which part he doesn't understand.
Right.
Okay, because I deal with all walks of life constantly. And quite frankly, the average person on the ground understands that we have a major problem. We know, they know that there is a major worker shortage in this country, coast to coast, due to the demographics of the baby boomers moving out of the workforce pool. They all know this. It's only our leaders, so-called leaders, that don't seem to know it and haven't even talked about it. Like, it's just unbelievable. Like within 10 years, 30% of our population in Sudbury is going to be over 65, fixed income.
Of course, some of us are already over that age limit now.
Yes.
But you're talking about that. Another thing that seems to be ignored is the fact that we have a drinking water source for 40% of our population, and we still want to build new roads and to contribute more salt to pollute our environment. And it also doesn't seem to be a realization that if you build new, you create 70% more CO2 to the environment. And while the city has declared a climate emergency, these things seem to be ignored. Is it because it's just too inconvenient or too unpleasant to consider them?
No, it's beyond the depth of understanding of most of the people responsible for dealing with them. If you have the right people on council who have that depth, then why aren't the others listening? And I will use, and I maybe shouldn't do it in this type of thing, but I will use Councillor Vagnini as one example. Here is a guy who's been a tremendous success as a financial advisor, knowing where to put your money, knowing how to make money. And in council, 3 accountant types discredit him, belittle him, attack him. Well, whoa, if we're not going to use the expertise that we send to that council, where is our democracy and where is our efforts to go ahead, move ahead? And
on that same line, you mentioned Councillor Vagnini. Now, that just brings up something else too. There are sort of two, I don't know if we call it schools of thought, because I'm not sure how much educated opinion is apparent in these viewpoints. But Councillor Vagnini has come out definitely against the big projects, and in particular, the one that's being considered now is the Junction East. Whereas we have another councillor, because there are opposing views, such as Deb McIntosh, who's definitely in favor of the Project East. This is a $100 million project. It could go even higher with inflation and other costs. We understand the ground where they're proposing to build it, which would be better left as a parking area, is actually unstable. So who knows what the cost will be. So here we have two opposing views. And now, mind you, in each candidate's situation, the various candidates have taken views with respect to, should we go ahead with this $100 million expenditure? Should we build a new arena? Should we build the twin pads out in the valley? Should we build the greenway? These are great things apparently for some, but others feel that they're a drain on our purse strings. How do you resolve something like that?
well, again, you have to take a look. You talked about two positions there. The one incident or the one position is based on knowledge of the coming demographic situation, based on the finances that will become necessary as that aging population moves out of the workforce, understanding that if you're going to invest, you better start taking a look at where we can cut our costs to stay without borrowing. And right now, the major borrowing that we're doing costs us 40% of the borrowed amount in interest. That's not healthy finance. The other individual either is unaware of or chooses to ignore the demographic situation in spite of promoting seniors' homes, which are really literally nothing more than dormitory rooms, or if you compare it to animals, it's cat cage in the animal shelter. And we saw that in the seniors' homes during the pandemic, where elderly people were locked in their rooms, could not leave their rooms for weeks on end. And this is healthy living. So until we get people in those positions that can recognize and have a broad view of everything in our society, and they don't need detailed view of it, but they do need a full, broad understanding of what affects what. We don't have that, or we haven't had that for the last 2 terms of council. Now, the new term of council, I don't know. We'll see who gets elected and how broad-minded they are. But you can't, we're out rushing out here to build seniors' homes. And in 20 years, 30 years at the maximum, those seniors' homes are going to be empty because the baby boom will be over.
Yeah, and we'll be dead. That's what you're trying to say, Tom, right? But
yes. So I'm not too worried about it. But
looking at the candidates in the various wards, I think we have 4 wards where we have just 2 candidates who are running, these would be Mr. Vagnini, Mr. Montpellier, who, by the way, I'm sorry that he didn't run for mayor because he's the one I would vote for. I haven't voted yet, by the way, and I haven't made up my mind. But if Jerry had run, I would have voted for him. Now you look at we have a Ward 11. We have 2 candidates, and Jerry and Michael both have running against one other individual. And also, I'm trying to think of the other ward. In Mr. Kerwin's ward, I think there's Mike Perrin is running against him. So those are going to be interesting outcomes. Some of the other wards, there's more than 2 running, which of course is a vote splitting situation, which is rather unfortunate. In your opinion, as well?
I don't think it matters as long as we have good candidates. The problem is, how do you determine what's a good candidate? Mm-hmm. And some of the candidates that are running, I am totally at a loss to understand why they're running. And that's not disparage them at all. It's that they don't have the expertise and the experience to handle the job. So why are they putting themselves out there?
You think if there was a letter in the paper the other day saying you don't have to have business experience in order to run for council, how do you feel about that?
I think whoever wrote that doesn't have business experience. Business experience means knowing where the money's going, what the money is doing for you, and how to adjust the way you're operating in order to have enough money to do what needs to be done. That's business experience.
That's true, and it's invaluable. However, that I was an employment counselor for many years. I heard from many employers, and as an employer myself, I know that sometimes the only way you really know if a person's going to be any good on the job is when they're on the job, when they've actually been working. Sometimes those who may not appear to be that great turn out to be stellar, and those that you would hope would be doing a good job. I'm not referring to our past mayor, but there is a reference there. Sometimes just just doesn't turn out that way.
Yeah, that's simply saying that we're going to excuse the people doing the selecting. And
well, that's us.
The general voters, okay? And that's all you're doing is just providing them with an excuse, because in any company, if you have poor personnel selection, you're going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So the people doing the selecting have to spend the time, do their homework to find out the capabilities of the people they're hiring. We haven't been doing that. We've been voting based on, we're going to get a shiny new arena, or we're going to get an art gallery or a new, okay. But that doesn't mean anything. What are we going to do to make sure we can finance those?
So you really have to look in depth at the situation. Now, if you were a mayor, I just want to bring something up here, because you actually came up with this a little while back, and how to use the money that has been borrowed. And you'd suggested here, we just put you on the spot. All fire stations to be made sustainable for so much dollar. All community arenas and emergency shelters to be made sustainable. Some of the projects already been, the CIP projects, to end playground revitalization and remainder money for wastewater to reduce yearly tax increases. Would you, if you're elected mayor, would you really endorse that? You've already come out saying you do that.
If I were mayor, I would certainly try to have council have consideration of those, because as mayor, I should not be promoting anything. That's up to the constituents through their representatives. However, if I were a representative on council, yes, I would definitely be promoting those.
Right.
Think about the emergency centers and arenas. We've been warned that we're going to be into catastrophic climate by 2050 if we don't cut our carbon dioxide emissions. But we're not doing anything to cut those carbon dioxide emissions. In fact, we're doing our utmost to spend as much carbon dioxide emissions as we can before that date.
Very true.
We want to build a new arena. We want to build an art gallery. We want to build a library. That's just emissions.
So we really should go back to, I know a letter was published today in one of my missives. You know, it's better to go back to boring and looking after the basics than looking after some of the extravagances that have been proposed. But we're just running out of time. So just your last final comments. There's a few more days to voting. If those people haven't voted already, any words of advice, Mr. Price?
Absolutely. Check out who has been talking about our major issues. Our most prime major issue is our aging population, not to protect that aging population, but because of the vacuum it will leave in our workforce when that aging population moves out of the workforce pool. Who has been talking about how we do budgets? Who has been talking about our debt? Who has been talking about our asset maintenance? And last, but by far from the least, who is taking a look at fire protection? And by that, it's not protection, it's response to fires. And we're looking at relocating fire stations. Well, the people that built our existing fire stations were not stupid. They built fire stations and established fire departments where they were needed. Who's decided that we don't need them there anymore? And on what basis? So ask those questions. Get the counselor or the candidate who can answer those, who is prepared to keep on asking those until it gets resolved. Because right now, I haven't heard only 2 or 3 of the mayoral candidates have even talked about any of those. The rest of them have been, oh yeah, I see this Sudbury growing and all this and that. Well, where on earth from?
Very good advice and very good direction. And of course, vote, because this is your chance. You don't want to have voter regret over the next 4 years.
I would temper that with saying vote responsibly, because if you vote stupidly, yes, we will have it for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Price, our Town, Our City Institute. I'm John Lindsay, representing CARP, Canadian Association of Retired Persons. Remember, vote, it's your future.
Yes.